Welcome. I hope you guys have been having a good day so far. I think we've had some great sessions so far. In this session, we're going to be looking at content construction kits and how they can help us in building content applications in Joomla in our websites. This is a really big topic, so we'll try to go quickly through it. My goal here isn't to give you every detail and all the tips and tricks and secrets of how every content construction kit works in Joomla. We'd be here for a couple days if we tried that. All I want to do here is give you an overview of what's available, what some of the basic options of the more popular content construction kits are, familiarize you guys with them, and hopefully give you guys an idea of if any of these are for you and which ones might help you solve the problems of projects you're working on in Joomla websites. Before we start looking at the actual content construction kits themselves, one of the things I want to look at is why do we even need content construction kits to begin with? What do they do for us? Why would we even consider these to use in our projects? Joomla, ever since the beginning, has always done content. It's a content management system itself, so of course it does content. And it does it very well for the most part. As long as all you need is a big blank canvas that's a text area that you can put whatever you want in and spit it out on the front end. If that's all you need, then really you don't need a content construction kit. You can just use that. It's great. But as soon as you get beyond that, as soon as you get beyond basic articles, basic content, it can very quickly become rather clumsy in how it handles content, how it handles different types of content, trying to manage it if you have specific types of content that you need to present a lot in your websites. And this is where content construction kits come in. The CCKs solve a lot of headaches for us, solve a lot of problems for us, and they do them very differently. And so we're going to look at some of those today. We're going to look at three of what are probably the most popular content construction kits that you'll find in Joomla. K2, we're going to look at Zoo, and also Seblod as well. These are definitely the most popular content construction kits that are available to us. If you open up 2 or 3 Joomla production sites in the field, odds are you'll find one of these in at least one of them. They're all over. They're used for all different types of applications. Each one of them handles content very differently and approaches it very differently. So we're going to look at how they each approach content, how they handle it, what they can do, and hopefully some of these will help solve some of the problems that you may be looking at. So let's dive right into this. These are big topics, so we're going to move quickly through them and hopefully have time for questions at the end. And if there's any further discussion, I'm happy to sit and chat with anybody afterwards about some of these. The first one we're going to look at is K2. This is definitely the most popular content construction kit out there. It's been around for many years. It has a large user base. It has its own large community within the Joomla community that builds extensions for it, that uses it. It's very stable. It's very handy. And it's definitely the most popular content construction kit out there, and we'll look at some of the reasons why. It's most popular for a reason. This is the kind of the dash that you get as soon as you install it in Joomla. It kind of collects all of the main functions that you need for K2 right into one handy dashboard on the home page of your administrator screen in the Joomla backend. And you can see kind of what we're looking at here. Some of it is very familiar. The terminology that you're going to see throughout K2 is going to be very familiar to you if you've worked with Joomla content. It has categories, of course. It has items or articles, and there's some new things that we'll see in here as well. We start out with our article manager with K2 items. These are very similar to Joomla. You have an article, and each article sits within K2 categories. Again, very similar to Joomla. If you're coming from Joomla content, this is going to be very familiar to you. You can have nested categories, and each article sits within one category and only one category, just like Joomla core content. So the structure of K2 content, as far as how it's organized, is very similar and should be very familiar to you if you've worked with Joomla content at all. Okay, but when we get into the article, this is where we start seeing several differences. Of course, we start out with familiar fields like a title and an alias, but very quickly we get into some new territory here. We can add a category, we get to add tags. K2 has had tags long before Joomla had tags, and K2 tags are actually very useful and very flexible themselves. We can start assigning menu items to tags, and tags are very useful in K2 as an organizational tool to help organize your content. Okay, we have some more options here that we have as we create our article, featured, published, stuff like that. But the real flexibility starts when we actually start creating the content. We get our content fields down here. Again, a familiar text area box that we have where most of your main body content comes in. But we start seeing some other options here that are available. We get to start adding images into our content, which now we have in Joomla, but K2 Images is still a lot more flexible than Joomla's image. So this would be your introduction image, for example, in a category blog view that might appear in an article, or at the top of your actual article when you're in the full item view. And Joomla can do this as well in its core content. It's added that feature now. K2 takes this a little bit to the next level still. It's done this for quite some time in that when you upload an image here, it actually resizes your image into 5 different sizes of images, allowing you to specify, for example, if I'm in a category blog view, I can have a smaller image that's loaded instead of my full image just shrunk down to size or something like that. This allows your front-end users, hopefully, to save yourself a little bit of headache, get yourself a performance boost by being able to send out optimized images to your pages on the front end instead of sending out your full image every time, just shrunk down and squeezed down, but still loading the big files. So we get to add images. We can add things like image galleries, other media like videos. But K2's real flexibility comes in its extra fields. And I've added a couple extra fields for us to look at here. For example, if we have a content type that is an event, and we want to specify event information for every event that we have, and we have lots of events, we're going to want these in every single article that's an event. If we just have our big text area, that may end up anywhere in the article. There's no uniform way to make sure that every event article has the information that we need. This allows us to start specifying that and to start expanding our content beyond just this blank white canvas that is going to probably end up looking different every single time you do it. Extra fields themselves are very flexible in K2 and can be very helpful for us. When we go to add an extra field, you're going to notice that we get to specify a name of it. We get to actually specify a type. We're going to add a date here. But K2 extra fields actually have their own structure as well. You can see we get to add extra fields to extra field groups. Now this bundles these extra fields together, related extra fields. For example, we had 2 types of extra fields there, a date and an address. We get to bundle these together in a group. Then we assign these groups to our K2 categories. Now this may seem a little bit mundane, but when you think about it, what this allows us to do is to start creating several different types of content within our site. Now, not only can we add fields, but we can say, all right, I need these type of fields for these categories. I only need these event fields for the category of articles that are my events in my site. So I can have a group for those categories. I can have another K2 extra fields group for other articles, and we can actually assign them to multiple groups, or we can actually assign individual groups to multiple categories. So our flexibility with extra field actually gives us a lot of potential in creating multiple different types of content instead of still having to stick with one type of content for our entire site. So extra fields in K2 give us a lot of options in doing that. And these are some of the very simple ones. We can add entire text areas. We have labels. We can add links, images. There's many different types of extra fields that we can use here, all of them allowing us to expand our content and make it into something that really isn't available or able to be used in just our core content capabilities of Joomla. So content in K2 is flexible. K2 also packs some other features within it that allows us to add more flexibility to the workflow of our site, to the management of our content itself. K2 has its own user permission system. Joomla users are added as K2 users. And we can specify for our user groups specific sets of permissions. Now some of these we could take out into or are already covered in normal ACL for any of the other components that Joomla has. Things like being able to add your own articles, edit any other articles, being able to publish items, stuff like that. These are permissions that still allow us to control which users can do what functions with our content. Some additional things that it brings in that you don't see anywhere else, though, are things like being able to very easily set permissions for entire groups for categories. I can say this specific user group is only able to edit within certain categories, or they're only able to interact with my content within certain categories. This allows us, again, to refine that workflow depending on, we've had several client sites where we've needed to take away options for what categories specific users can interact with. It prevents a lot of confusion with content ending up in the wrong places, and make sure that things go where they're supposed to go. So the user capabilities of K2 is an added benefit of being able to manage content, especially when you're working with a lot of different authors or editors or people that are contributing to your site or are interacting with your site in a way that handles the content. K2 also packs in its own comment system, which is actually a pretty decent comment system. In fact, this is the comment system that's actually used in the Joomla community magazine. If you go to magazine.joomla.org, look at any of the articles and look at the comment section there. This is powered by K2 Comments. That's integrated right inside K2 and has some really great features there with the user profiles and being able to capture spam, stuff like that. It does a great job at managing comments too. So even besides the flexibility that we get with K2 as far as adding extra fields in its content, K2 packs some additional features that may be helpful to you if you're working on a project, for example, with a lot of authors, or maybe you would like to add some interaction to your site. It has some extra features that are very helpful there as well. So this is very briefly K2 because we have to get on to other ones. But K2 is very flexible. This allows us to create our different content types. Most importantly, a lot of these content construction kits are very flexible, and we'll look at how they handle different they approach content very differently. But one of the biggest things that K2 has going for it is its stability. It's incredibly stable. It's got a very large community of people that work a lot with K2. It's got a great team supporting it, and it's very extensible. You can go to the Joomla extensions directory and you'll find many extensions that are specific for K2, expanding, adding features to K2. It's been around long enough that it has a lot of expansion capability even within its own system. It's kind of got its own little ecosystem there of K2. So it's a pretty impressive content construction kit if you're trying to start adding new features, new types of content to your website. Okay, we're going to move on to the next content construction kit here, which we mentioned, which is Zoo. Zoo's a relative newcomer to the content construction kit field. It's been around for only a few years as opposed to K2, which has been around for much longer than that. But it's incredibly flexible. It's right now kind of my personal favorite content construction kit for now. We'll see how that goes as other ones add features. But it has totally rethought, compared to Joomla core content in K2, which besides the extendable features of K2, they approach content very similarly in how it's constructed and how it's made. Zoo kind of rethinks all of that. If you thought there were some familiar things in K2 that you had seen in Joomla core content, you're not going to see those here. So it may be a little bit steeper to learn, but I think once you get a hold of it, it's going to be a lot more flexible especially than core content, but it's a very, very great system. One of the first things you're going to notice here is up in the upper corner here, we actually have two tabs that specify our different areas of content. We have a company blog and a company directory. In Zoo, these are called apps. And basically what an app is in Zoo is kind of its own little instance of the content. These are totally separate. They have their own separate parameters. They have their own settings. They're going to have their own content types. They're going to have their own fields for their content types. They're going to have their own comment sections, their own submission forms. Everything's contained within an app, and we can keep on creating more instances of these apps, as many as we need to accomplish what we're doing here. So in this case, I just have two set up just for demonstration purposes. But these apps are entirely self-contained instances of these, okay? And then of course we have, starting with items here that are very similar. These are the actual content. This is the actual content of K2 itself, or of Zoo itself. Zoo offers some great features for if you're moving into any system. K2 offers the ability to import content from Joomla. Zoo offers the ability to import content from Joomla. It also offers the ability to import content from K2 if you have K2 installed and content in it. We also have the ability to import from a CSV file or from JSON. If we have content in here, we can actually export this and take it to another site and be able to install it there, keeping all our data. Just a really quick way to export that. And when we import content, it helps us automatically map all of our fields. Now we're just importing from Joomla here, so we just have this basic text area that we get in Joomla content. If we're coming from K2 or any other system, we'll actually be able to map our fields directly from K2 over to their corresponding fields in Zoo, which hopefully makes your life a lot easier in trying to figure out exactly where all your content went and moving things around, getting everything to show up in the right places. This helps us map all of that out, okay? So when we started looking at Zoo, we kind of came from this really high level of apps, these big chunks of lots of content collected together in an app or an instance of Zoo. Let's go back to from the other end and come from the very bottom, the very smallest pieces of content in Zoo, and work our way up to creating our content. Zoo works off of content types as well. So you can see here, this is our company blog. You can see the same icon up there for the blog. And these are two different content types that we have set up. We have articles for our blog, and we have authors for our blog. These are both treated as content. They have their own settings. They can have their own fields and are entirely customizable as individual content types. When we open up a content type to edit its elements, though, this is where things start to get really flexible and actually very easy for anybody trying to set this up. This entire interface is drag and drop. There's no coding required to add new elements. There's no custom programming required. If I want to take away elements or move elements around, I can just drag and drop them. The ones that we see over there on the right, these are the elements that our content is actually using. These are the ones that were actually implemented in our content right now. The ones over here on the left are the ones that are available to us. We can have as many of these as we want. We can drag more text areas over there if we need several text areas for different types of things. But this is all drag and drop. I'm just going to grab one, move them over there. And you can see that Zoo has a wide variety, probably one of the largest varieties of field types that are available to any content construction kit, ranging from your typical text area and text, links and emails, dates, stuff like that, all the way to things that actually that I probably wouldn't have expected out of a content construction kit, but I've actually used a lot now that I see them there, like Google Maps and Discuss Comments and stuff like that you may not have thought would fit in a content construction kit, but actually comes in very handy. Let's open up one of these elements and look at some of the settings for it, though. We see some familiar things. We get to put a name, a description. One of the great things that I absolutely love about elements here is we get to set access levels on a per element basis. Now, normally in every other system, K2, Joomla content, everywhere else, we get to set access levels for individual articles. We get to set access level for categories. We get to set access level for menu items. But K2 or Zoo allows us to set access levels for every individual piece of content, element within a piece of content. So we can say that these particular parts of my article are available to public users, to everybody, while these particular parts of my article are reserved for registered users or special users or anybody else. Any other user group that I would like to reserve them for. And we get this on every single element. This is very flexible, and I don't know of any other content construction kit that allows us to do this at this level, which is great. Many of these elements you'll see have this repeatable checkbox here, yes or no, and this actually comes in very handy. I use this a lot for links. When I need to put a link at the bottom of my article, what this allows me to do is drag one element over here, my link, Then when users go to add the content, if they need to add a second link or a third link or a fourth link, there's going to be a little text there that says repeat this element or something like that. We'll see that in the next slide. And it duplicates that element. So this walks that balance between having the simplest possible form for my users, which may not be the most technically savvy users in the world, walks that balance between having a very simple form while still letting them add 3, 4, 5 links if they need to, organize that however they need, and gives them a minimal form with the greatest flexibility. Okay, so we can go ahead and add these elements, set these parameters, just drag them over there, create whatever content we like. So now we've actually created the content. We can do this as many times as we like. We can add new types of content. We just click that new button up there and it's going to create a new type of content here. We can have as many of these as we like. Once we've created our content, we get the same level of flexibility when it comes to showing our content, when it comes to presenting our content. One of the frustrating things about even things like core content, and you might see this in other content construction kits, is it's kind of an all or nothing type of approach. If you have extra fields, you've got to show all your extra fields, and they've all got to be in the same place at the bottom of your article or top of your article, wherever you put them. And to customize that, to filter out which fields I want to show and which views, or which fields I want to show at the top of my article versus at the bottom of my article. To customize that, I've got to start hacking the template or creating overrides for my template, which is not really the ideal scenario for me if I want to be able to maintain this going forward. I want to minimize the stuff that I have to maintain outside of the core of my extensions. If we open up one of our views, we have template layouts here for each of our different templates that are installed on our site. And you can see the different types of layouts. We have our feed view, which would be like an RSS feed. We have our full view, which is obviously the full article submission view, which is for front-end submissions. We get to set what fields are available for front-end submissions or are not available for front-end submissions. And of course, we have our teaser view, which would be more like our blog view or our blog layout view anywhere else. We have some extension layouts too, which, as you can see, are specific layouts for use in specific cases in the site, like smart search, different types of zoo items, which you'll see if you use modules. These will be used in modules as well. So we get all of these parameters for each one of these views, entirely customizable. And within each one of these, again, it's drag and drop. I don't have to touch code. I don't have to touch anything to be able to set these up. Now you'll see these are some of the fields that we had previously. The right column there is the positions of the template, and we get to drag our fields over here to where we want them to show up in the template. So for example, we have several fields here that are going to show up in a row across the top right under the title there that are just that small information related about the article itself. It's not actually the content, it's content about the content. And then we have other areas where we can drop any of our fields in anywhere in the template. So we get to specify exactly which fields show up where in our template and in which views they show up. And this is all drag and drop. These are the ones that we have available to us. The only ones that are going to show up in this list right here are the ones that we've actually set up when we set up our elements. And these ones up top are kind of the housekeeping ones that are attached to each article that you don't really have much control over, like the publishing date, the amount of hits, stuff like that you may want information about the content that you may want to display, but aren't really part of the submission form or aren't really part of the content editing process. So each one of these, all the way from the individual element and being able to control access control levels there, all the way up to being able to drop any of these elements anywhere we want in our template without having to touch any code. Zoo brings a lot of flexibility in being able to do this. So if you have a lot of different types of content with these needs where you're going to need very customizable views in the front end for where your content shows up and the order in which it shows up, not just throwing them all together in the bottom, Zoo might be something that you want to look at. When we go to edit an item, again, this is very different. It doesn't look as much like any of the core views that you see in Joomla content. Doesn't even look like the editing views in K2. It's still very different. We see some familiar things, but it gets different pretty fast. We get to add a name to it for a title. We get some familiar options here of publishing it. We actually get to say on a per item basis if we want this article to be searchable or not. Do we want to include this in the search results? I may not want to include my terms of service in the search results where it might show up at the very top when the most relevant search result is definitely not terms of service. So I can actually exclude on a per item basis individual articles from appearing in my search results. I get to say if I want comments on my article. Zoo has its own comments engine built in, and I can say I don't want comments on this article. And we can control comments right here from the individual article editing. And then one of the most different things you'll notice here is we actually have two fields here for categories. This is something that none of the other content construction kits do. Zoo actually allows us to have allows us to place articles into multiple categories. I already have one category up there, and I can start selecting other categories and drop this article into multiple categories. This is extremely helpful if you have content that you might need to appear in multiple places on your site. So this primary category field here, this is the category that kind of owns this article. It's the one that this article belongs to, this category here. But I can actually specify multiple categories that this content is relevant to or I want to appear in, as many as I'd like. It's not limited to just two, but I can keep on placing more categories in there. This allows me to, for example, have this content appear in multiple blog columns or blog layouts in the front end. Wherever I need it to appear in, I'm not restricted by the one article goes in one category and only one category thing anymore. I can have these in multiple categories throughout my site and still be able to manage it from one article interface. I manage one article and it can show up in many places in my site. So it's very flexible like that. If we keep scrolling down, we actually see our add another date here. We have a date field. This is our add another date button if I need to add another one of these. And all that's going to happen here is this is going to repeat again. We see this in our text area further down. We get to add another text area here, and it just duplicates that text area. And allows me to keep adding more information there, organize my information better, especially with text areas, but with things like links, dates, other things like that. I get to manage one element from my configuration standpoint, but still have the benefits of being able to add as many links as I need to be able to add there. So Zoo brings a lot of flexibility. It's new, it's very popular, gained in popularity a lot. Quite frankly, K2 made a very big blunder when Joomla 3.0 came out. They decided they were not going to support Joomla 3 until the long-term support release. And so a lot of people that were starting to use Joomla 3, they didn't have K2. So they had to either migrate to Zoo, or new users that were just coming along started using Zoo. So Zoo grew very quickly, has a lot of popularity. It also has a smaller but just as vibrant ecosystem of its own, of people extending on it. It actually has some really amazing capabilities that you'll get with searching and filtering. Some really cool stuff that's been done there of people that have been building extensions to extend off of Zoo, the content construction kit. But it's incredibly flexible. If there's one thing to say about Zoo is that from the very bottom all the way to the top, it's incredibly flexible in allowing us to manage our different types of content. Okay? The last type of content construction kit we're going to look at today is Seblod. And Seblod, again, totally handles content very differently from both K2 and Zoo. This is the dash that we get when we first install Seblod. We looked at K2's dash, we looked at Zoo's dash that we see when we first install it. The one thing you're going to notice here is that there's no items anywhere. I mean, there's no content for me to edit here. This is because Seblod actually handles content, again, very differently from both K2 and Zoo. K2 and Zoo create their own content. They create their own separate architecture for handling articles and categories. Seblod doesn't do that. Seblod is actually a layer on top of the Joomla core components. So what we're going to do from here, from these screens, when you go to your components and you select Seblod, this is just configuration. We're just setting up everything here. When we actually go to add content and manage everything, we're actually going to be doing that through the core article and category interfaces. Now, Seblod also takes a different approach to what is content. It views more things as content than we would normally think. For example, it views users as content. So we can actually extend on user profiles and add things to user profiles, as well as being able to add things to articles, article categories, user groups, other types of content that we have in Joomla. But Seblod actually allows us to extend things like user profiles as well. Okay, so we can see that here we have, these are the types of content types that we have by default when we install Seblod. We have, of course, articles, we have categories, these are types of content, we can customize each of them. We also have users and user groups by default that we can extend on the core fields and capabilities that we find in Joomla. So this actually offers a lot of flexibility. I see people all the time that install entire they have K2 or something like that, and then they install huge systems like Joomla Social or Community Builder or something like that because they want to add some fields to their profiles. Well, we have this built right in here, right with our content system. It's much lighter, much more efficient, and actually works with the core content. All this is a layer of more information, of enhancements that show up on top of the Joomla core capabilities that we have. Right? If we open up one of these content types, we can open it up to configure it. We're going to see a screen that looks something like this. Now, this right here, if we look at this top bar here, these are the different views that we have available to us. For example, I'm editing the view of the backend admin form right now. So when I'm in the administrator and I go to my article manager and I create an article, there's a form that shows up that I put in all my content and my information in to create an article. This allows me to customize that. Right? It allows me to rearrange that, to move things around, change the titles or information about that. I can also add new items here as well. I can add new fields and drop those in. There's actually a couple fields that I've added that will be on the bottom of this list. I can add new fields to my content type. These are all core aspects of Joomla content. Everything down to the layout, how the form itself is laid out, not just the fields, can be customized in Seblod. We also can edit the front-end editing form, of course the introduction, the intro view, and of course the full content view of this as well. We can do these for all of these, both articles, categories, users, user groups, any other type of content that we create, we get to customize, add our fields to, add whatever we need to, all the views of it, both the front end and the back end. When we go to actually create content, like I mentioned, we're not going to go to Seblod to add a new article like we do with K2 or Zoo. We're actually going to go directly to the article manager. And nothing really looks very different here. We have the same toolbar up top, the same list of articles with the same information here. It all looks very similar. And I actually think this is a benefit because we get to manage all of this without having to relearn all our workflows. If we have a lot of people working on our sites, which we work with a lot of sites that have dozens of editors and authors that are contributing and working, we don't have to ask them to relearn their workflows or learn two workflows if we have some content that sits in K2 and some content that sits in Joomla. We don't have to ask anybody to relearn anything. We get to use this core interface right here that's familiar, that we've always been using. We get some differences, however, when we start pressing this new button up top to create a new article, where instead of going directly to the article form, we're going to get an intermediary pop-up here that allows us to select what we're editing, okay? So right now you saw we have articles, categories, users, and user groups. Well, the only thing I can be adding from the article manager interface is articles right now. If I go ahead and create more content types, maybe I want to create an event content type or anything like that as in an article form, These will show up here as well, and we can select exactly which type of content we're going to be creating. This is going to show up, this is going to bring up again the typical article form with the enhancements that we've made, with the additions that we've made in our configuration steps. When we get into our article, though, again, things look very familiar. You're going to see everything's the same. I've actually scrolled down here in this screenshot, but we have our text areas that are available to us, and we've created an intro text and a full text area for this. I often do this a lot because it's hard to convince people to keep on adding in that little intro text link there. You'd think it'd be simpler to have them do that, the page break link that you find at the bottom of the Joomla editor a lot. But it's obviously, at least in my experience, a lot more helpful to just have two separate areas. It's very clear for exactly where your content's appearing. So we've separated those, and you can see I've started adding new fields down here that you would normally not find anywhere in Joomla content, but I've just added them at the bottom of my article. These could go anywhere. I can add new sections, new tabs at the top to manage these. But we can start adding these, and again, we're within this core editing field, or this core editing view that we get from Joomla. So it's very familiar. I don't have to relearn anything. I just keep on editing like I've normally been editing. I just have more options available to me here, and I can start adding new content types, different types of content to help me organize my content. Okay, so that's Seblod. I think its greatest strength that all of these have a great deal of flexibility when it comes to creating different types of content. They all have the ability to add different types of fields, some more than others, some different ways than others, some think about and handle content very differently, but they all do roughly the same thing. The biggest difference is I think in the philosophy of how the developer that made it views content itself. And depending on that philosophy, you might find that one of these may be better than the other for one project, while another may be more helpful for another project. Or you may just find one that you absolutely love and use for everything in the world. That's fine too. But these are incredibly flexible. There's several other content construction kits that you'll find in the Joomla extensions directory. These are the most popular. These are the ones that you'll find all over the place. Some of them that I didn't mention, things like Sobi or Sobi Pro, which can be considered a content construction kit in many ways. It's more of a directory extension, I think, and much more targeted, much less of a wide use case that it can be used for. It's much more targeted, but these ones can be used for a wide variety of content for anything. Okay, those are our content construction kits, and I think I've left like 10 or 15 minutes here at the end, if I've talked fast enough, hopefully, to hopefully handle some questions. We were just able to go over a few of the main features, hopefully give you an idea of what each of these are capable of. Start over there.
Okay, you were saying that the Zoo that you could actually add extra fields to forms. So like if I wanted to extend the registration form into Joomla, kind of short, can I do that?
So,
like if I wanted to, like they have address, but if I wanted to put date of birth,
right,
sex, or...
Right. So the one thing about both Zoo and K2 is that they're limited to content itself. Their role is to create articles and stuff like that. Now you can create a content type that you may say is a user profile, and then you might ask every user to fill out a user profile and create it, but that's all that is an article that you've set up to be. It doesn't actually interact with the actual user profiles themselves, the actual Joomla user profiles themselves. Out of all of these, Seblod is the only one that actually interacts with the user profiles themselves that you can extend, and when somebody registers, after they register, you can ask them to provide more information about themselves, like the date of birth, stuff like that. Yes. One thing I do want to point out is that you may not need any of these to accomplish that. Joomla Core has an extended user profile plugin that pretty much nobody ever uses, but is really cool, that does just that. Adds fields like date of birth, where do you live, stuff like that. That it's a core plugin. It just sits there. It's disabled. And you can go in and enable that and add a whole set of fields that are right there, and I think there's even a spot at the end for you to specify a custom field, add a name of your own field there.
I know that the original registration form, and then I know it's a way you can go into the user section and extend that, but I didn't know.
Right, so that plugin actually shows up with the user registration as well.
But you said there's an additional one to that, where you can put in like date of birth and...
No, this extended user profile plugin in Joomla does that. You can ask for date of birth, you can ask for where they live, stuff like that.
Can you make your own custom field?
I'm pretty sure it actually has like a blank field at the end, but it would be very simple to extend on that. Of course, that gets into needing at least some programming to do that, and then of course you have to manage it through upgrades and stuff like that, which you may not want to do. You may want to use something else to accomplish that. But if all you're looking for is just a very couple extra common fields like date of birth, I would check that plugin first. That might actually solve your problem.
Okay, one more question. If I wanted to put, I saw when you were discussing K2, it said media. It's right next to it. Okay, does that mean video, media?
Yes, yes.
So
separate from images, yeah.
So if I wanted to place a video inside of an article, I could use that function.
You can upload your own video, YouTube videos, Vimeo videos.
They will be local, I think.
Yeah, you can upload your own video file.
Now, is there any kind of adjustments that you can use? Like, say I wanted to make the video bigger.
You get to set a size for it.
Really? You do that with K2? Okay,
and with Zoo. Zoo does the same thing. There's a media element for Zoo that you can pick a media file.
Okay, now we run any HTML5 content.
I'm pretty sure
because I'm developing stuff using Captivate, Adobe Captivate.
Yes.
With Adobe Captivate, it has some kind of interaction.
Yep.
And you can use that with, okay.
If I'm thinking of the right thing, you should be able to do that. Unless I'm misplacing my memory of exactly how Adobe Captivate works, you should be able to do that.
Well, they used to do on Flash, but now they're switching over to HTML5 code.
Right.
So when you develop the content, it is interactive, but it's all HTML5. And that K2 would help me out with that.
I'm pretty sure. Again, I don't know exactly what you're setting up there. The interactive, if for example, if it requires it to load its own HTML page or something like that, to load its own JavaScript in order to accomplish that, then you probably wouldn't be able to, because all its purpose there is to actually play a media file, MP4 or a Flash file or something like that. So if it requires additional assets besides that, you may not be able to do that. That aspect up there.
A question about how these things store the data in the database. Do any of them allow you to basically use an external tool to actually directly access the MySQL database and update the data? And someone had mentioned that they thought maybe Fabric did, and I think that was mentioned in at least one of the intros on this. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
So there's no reason why you couldn't do that. Right, it's right. Some of the problems that you're going to run into, for example, we mentioned that K2 creates images of different sizes when you save it for your article image. Okay, it takes your image and creates extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. Okay, so it does that as you save the article. That way it can just serve up the correct size image for an optimized image. If you dump articles directly in the database, that won't occur.
What we've got is putting the initial part of the data in and then running some programs that update the census data in additional fields. So it's not actually the fields that are probably going to be entered directly into Joomla. Kind of common. Yeah. Kind of like, it's almost like a linking the database.
Right. Yeah, so if it's just actual content itself,
right?
Absolutely, we've done that all the time. We do that all the time. Probably the hardest one to do that is Zoo, because Zoo actually stores all of its extra fields in one cell or in one thing. It just wraps them all together. It wouldn't be impossible. I'm sure you could write a script to automate all of that for you. But as far as just being able to do that really quickly, that would be the most difficult one. It's not terribly difficult, but relative to the others, it's not as straightforward. Right here.
Are those WYSIWYG editors extensible? The two that I saw looked kind of slimmed down.
Right. So that's the default profile that we get in Joomla now. That uses the default WYSIWYG editor that you have set up for your site. So if you install JCE and tell that to be used, the WYSIWYG you're going to see is JCE. If I, like most of the sites that I work on in real life, I use CodeMirror all the time. You're going to see CodeMirror when I pull up an article there if I pull it up on a live site. That's the default editor that we have in Joomla. So as far as extensible, it's as extensible as every other content area in Joomla is. So you can set up JCE with the custom profiles and have that set up, and that's going to follow the same rules.
One other question. It was either Seblod or Zoo, or it might have been both, that I think they had an option for tables. Do you know how they handle tables? I mean, especially as far as being responsive.
Content tables?
No, well, actually, yeah, tables in content.
I don't think either of them have special options for that. I know with things like JCE, there's table builders like in JCE that allow you to drop tables in there and without having to, actually go to the HTML and create the table. It just drops it in there for you with the amount of rows and stuff that you needed. I don't think any of those, and I've worked with these, I don't think any of them actually have, create a table extra field or something like that.
I thought I saw one on that. I was just wondering, because tables is a real problem.
Especially when you get responsive, yeah. It is. What was it? I believe JCE does like the HTML5 version of tables that can be more responsive than your static tables.
There's a few ways to handle it.
Right. It's not straightforward. Tables are whatever.
A component called Tabulizer. Mm-hmm. That it takes a little while. It's got a learning curve, but
it works, right? Yeah. I think I saw one over here. Yes.
What's the current compatibility status of K2 Joomla version?
3.2 current. All of these are compatible with the latest versions of Joomla, as well as 2.5. I believe you can actually get K2 for 1.5 still too. You can actually download that. Don't know why you would want that, but it's available. But all three of these are available for all current versions of Joomla up there.
The content items that are created are all treated by Joomla as articles. You can't place them in a module position.
So some of the extensions actually, like Zoo, actually comes with a whole suite of modules that allow you to do things like drop a Zoo item in a module. K2 I don't think allows you to drop an individual K2 item in a module. It does. Okay, I've never actually had to use that before. I'm trying to think of any scenario that I've had to use that for. But then, of course, Seblod is core articles, so with just an enhancement layer on top of that. So it's treated just like core content.
So it sounds like Joomla doesn't have any distinction between pages and posts, like WordPress, or does it?
No. So the primary and main or only content that core Joomla handles is articles. Okay, so just to briefly explain that, what we can do is assign an individual article to a menu item that would become a WordPress page. It's a single content piece that is a page. All right, or we can go to the same menu structure, and instead of saying show a single article, we can say show a category of articles, and those same articles are then shown as a blog or a post.
So you can do that by assigning these categories.
Right. Well, we manage them all the same way. The difference where you would differentiate in creating what WordPress calls a post and what WordPress calls a page is in how you create the menu item. You select one option to make it a page, aka show a single menu item, or you can show a whole category of them where each one of them are treated as posts.
Do you know if search engines index them differently, like they do for WordPress pages versus posts?
I think that would just depend on how the search engine accesses it. I mean, it's all content. It just depends on how you've set up your site that lets the search engine access it or not access it.
The search engines look at the HTML, right?
Right.
Well, for posts, like a blog post in WordPress, they index them faster because there's a date. Usually, if it's a relevant, current news topic,
that doesn't have anything to do with the actual content itself. That has to do with Google noticing that this page that has a lot of posts on it has new content added to it all the time. So we're going to come back and look at it more often because we've noticed that it has more content added to it. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual content itself. It's just do with it has more to do with the frequency of updates, which you would accomplish the same thing by having a blog view of a category of articles. Right here.
When you said searchable, on one of the slides you said that you can make it searchable or not searchable.
Right.
Is that searchable within the website, like the search?
Right, so if I have a search box, yes, that's not Google search results. You do have the ability to set that, like for, in each Joomla menu item has that. Individual articles have that you can tell it to not be indexed or to not follow the links there or anything like that. But that particular parameter right there was for the internal site search. So for example, if I have a shopping cart, or if I have a whole bunch of articles that are related to products that I sell, and somebody searches, it may contain the search term, but I don't want my terms of service to be at the top. You know what I mean?
So does it still show up in a Google search?
Yes, that has nothing to do with Google searches. That's only internal as far as Joomla's indexing the content and returning it with the internal search of the site. Nothing to do with Google.
Will there be a reason why you wouldn't want something to be searched by Google on your website?
Yeah, there's. I mean, it depends on what type of site you have, or what the considerations are. But there's many use cases. There's many uses that you would say, ignore this page.
For Google to ignore that page.
Or any other search engine.
Okay, so is that somewhere in there where you can check a box that says don't?
That's usually going to, in most of these, you'll find that in the right column, in the right below the metadata information where you can add tags or keywords. You can set a no index or no follow for each individual article and menu item.
I mean, is it a tag that you say don't show, or what is it?
No, it's going to be it's a little drop-down box there on the right side in most of all these that'll say, have options, no index, no follow.
So no index means don't let Google follow.
Right. Okay. No index tells Google, ignore this page. Don't index it at all. Anything else? I think we're almost out of time. That's it. All right. Thank you.